just before coming out here, and one thing that struck me was both of you were saying, yeah, I love NFTs, but we haven't even started yet. There's so much. And you were both just chomping at the bit to talk about the future of NFTs before most people are even aware of what in the world an NFT is. So we're currently in the hype cycle where my mom is asking me, hey, Jonathan, have you heard about this new thing called NFTs? You should look into it. I'm like, thanks, Mom. I've been tokenizing artwork for 2 years now. I appreciate your new interest in my life, not to make it personal. So before we go looking at the future of NFTs, I want to just stay kind of rooted in the now of what exactly they are. Me to do. So explain it to me like I'm 5.
So, sure. So traditionally, we have paper, which represents a house, something else, or we have so. I'll stop there. So we have paper, and if you want to prove you have ownership of the house, you keep the paper in the safe. So in order to prove you have ownership of the house to your friend or to a bank or to some financial institution or something, you have to go all the way to your bank or your vault, your safe, get the paper out, take that exact actual copy of the house deed, the paper, and bring it to the bank or the financial person or what have you. See, I own the house. This is it. This is the actual copy. And that's very old school, because you have to actually hold the piece of paper. There's only one piece of paper. There's nothing that could prove you own it except for actually having it. So what an NFT is, it's a digital representation, just like an email address or a token in this case, that is assigned to show that you own this piece of paper that's inside your safe. And there's only one token in the entire world that represents that I own this house or I own this piece of paper. So it's a digital representation of ownership of something that's not digital, or that's not, it points to what you own.
Got it. But Diana, this ancient technology of a paper authenticating my ownership has worked for generations. It was fine for my grandpa. It was fine for my dad. Why is it the fact that it's digital better than paper or vellum or something I can actually hold? Because I can't hold an NFT. So what is it?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to back up a second. I love the use case that Jeff jumped to. It's a very practical use case, and it's something that people don't really think about right now. Everybody's obsessed with art NFTs and NBA Top Shot and things like that. But what Jeff said is actually a very practical use case. So to sort of just back up for people here who maybe have no background in NFTs, NFT is a non-fungible token. So to understand that, you have to understand what non-fungible means. So a fungible token would be something that is replaceable. So if I give you, Jonathan, if I give you $1 and you give me, you repay me, a week from now and you give me $1 back, I don't expect to get that exact same dollar bill that I gave you back. You can give me a new dollar bill. You can give me 4 quarters. I don't really care. It's the same thing. And that's sort of what money is. It's fungible. Non-fungible just means the opposite of that. So it's unique. So if I gave you the Mona Lisa and I expected it back, you just wanted to borrow it to show your friends or something, I would expect you to give me back that exact same Mona Lisa. I wouldn't be cool with it if you made a copy of that Mona Lisa, or if you took a photo of it and you texted it to me. I'd be like, no, Jonathan, like, I gave you the Mona Lisa. I need that original back. And so that's sort of what a non-fungible token is it's unique or it's rare. And then another cool thing about it is that it because it lives on the blockchain, the ownership of that piece of artwork or whatever that digital asset is can easily be traced back to you as the owner. So What Jeff was talking about is a very practical use case, and it's how you can take basically any physical object and turn it into a digital asset on the blockchain or an NFT. And so, like with your house deed, or even with your passport or your driver's license, you can put all of these on the blockchain. And so you can envision a situation where in the future you'll have an NFT that contains your passport, your driver's license, your social security number, your birth certificate. Like all of these things can be turned into an NFT. And this, a benefit of this is that it can prevent fraud, for instance. So, I mean, first example that comes to mind, I don't know what this says about me, but back in college, everybody has a fake driver's license to get booze when they're underage. So they would make it harder to do that, whether that's a good or a bad thing. But you get the idea. Right. It just makes it harder to copy things. And it makes that identity traceable back to you so that there's no doubt as to who the owner of that asset is.
Outstanding. One detail that was always interesting to me is any new technology is applauded by looking like what it's replacing at first, and then is ridiculed for looking like it after it's been around for a while. Kind of like when movies first came around, they were just like plays, and now they're completely unrecognizable from watching a play in a static stage. So it's kind of interesting that to help people understand this new technology, we talk about what it isn't, which is money and these physical objects. So we're already getting into the weeds in the questions portion of the program. So in light of starting to split hairs and get finer and finer detail of helping people wrap their heads around it, one question is from Sarete saying, can particular denominations of money with a serial number be an NFT? So is that kind of a way to help people understand fungible, but some types of fungible things can then be rendered non-fungible by virtue of some elements like their serial number?
In theory, yes. There's only $1 that has the serial number of 11112. And so that single dollar that has the number 11112 could be visualized in your head as a token. And so you have these many tokens out there. And they're each unique, and they're part of a greater collection in this case. And that would be the US dollar in this example. Mm-hmm. Compared to cryptocurrency tokens, which we know them mainly as ERC20 tokens, and these, there's no numbers on them. So you would just simply have a piece of paper that says USD, and there would be no number attached. And so that's kind of the difference. So yes.
Got it. So one thing I had trouble wrapping my head around at the beginning was, how am I sending this from me to you, but then I can just use another wallet, use my seed phrase, and it's all there. So how did it get from here to over there? So how am I keeping track of who owns this and the change of sending? So that's another question from Sarete, which I think is a perfect kind of question to answer, which is, okay, is it actually going somewhere? How do you keep track of that? So who do you appeal to know who owns what and where it's going?
I think the short answer to this is that it's all recorded on a ledger on the blockchain. But Jeff, you're the technical person, so I'll let you give the more detailed answer.
That's a great example there, and a very good question. And so just like Diana said, everything is recorded on a blockchain, or the blockchain that the NFT token lives on. And everything comes from how an NFT token is birthed is from a smart contract, which births them essentially. And that smart contract has a particular address. And then when that smart contract mints a token, it can only mint that single token. So if I sent a token to you, and then I recovered my seed, and I now start to mint more tokens, I believe that you would still be the only owner of that token, where it has ID number 1, and I can just mint ID number 2, 3, 4. Sure, I can issue a new contract, and then I would have ID number 1 again. However, the origin point would be instead of smart contract 1112, it would be smart contract 1113. So just like Diana said, everything is traceable on the ledger. And that actually brings up a really good point and exposure you pointed out to kind of one of the vulnerabilities and weaknesses that we see today in NFTs and the blockchain that's not been exploited largely yet. And that's cloning and having duplicates of different contracts of NFT tokens that represent the same thing, but one's fake or one's not the original.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's a interesting story that helped me get my head around it, which is in Micronesia, ray stones. They're giant stones, like 8 feet tall, and to own one is a point of pride and valuable. But they're too big to take with you. But everybody around knows that that's your stone. And ownership is distributed through the community in their memory of, oh yeah, that's Jonathan's stone. All right, that's Diana's stone. That's Jeff's stone. And then you do me a solid. And then I say, okay, everybody, that's now Jeff's stone. The stone doesn't move anywhere. It doesn't do anything, but everybody knows that that's now yours. That's kind of like the blockchain. The blockchain is the record of whose stone it is. And when I send my NFT to you, I'm not actually sending that NFT. I'm more telling the blockchain this address can now control that NFT and to give up control to somebody else. Right? So is that kind of a weird idiot's understanding of how it goes somewhere?
No, I think it's completely correct. And that's actually the same example as how I learned to understand a blockchain, is how it was a similar example on how there was a cartoon and they said, Joe owns this. And then everyone in the village would say, Joe owns that, and agree that Joe owns that. And then someone else would say, Sally owns this. And everyone else would say, Sally owns that. And then someone would say, Bob owns that. And then people were like, no, Bob does not own that. And that was how I understood blockchain. And so going back to this, and I see a question in the chat about who keeps track of who owns what. And the question and the answer is the blockchain, aka the general public, aka the village in this example.
Right, right. Okay, so one other thing is helping people understand what NFTs are, and that being amazing versus people discounting NFTs for what they aren't. And in my experience, many people will blame NFTs for human deception or human beings lying, and there really isn't a technological solution for human duplicity yet, right? So what's been your experience with people ignoring what NFTs can do because they can't do other stuff? And what is it that you help them understand, and how do you do that?
Diana, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I can go first. Sure. Yeah. So I think one thing that I would tell people is that we need to shift our thinking around what is a valuable asset. So for people out there who think, well, why would I pay so much money for basically like a JPEG that I could just download for free? You're missing the point there. I don't think you can do a one-to-one comparison of NFTs and physical art. I think there's so much more that goes into NFTs that you can never get with physical art. But before I go into that, I will just say, like, one way I guess that you can wrap your mind around this is, if you're still approaching it from a traditional art perspective, is I've seen some people get like a digital photo frame and put their NFTs in the digital photo frame. And that's actually a pretty cool way to slowly transition into the digital asset space, because then instead of having one static piece of art hanging on your wall all the time, you can actually switch it up. Like every hour you can have a different artwork or 3D image, moving image show up on your screen, or you can set it based on the decor in your house at the moment or the season that it is. It can be constantly changing, which is pretty cool. But the reason that, like we were talking about this earlier, and Jeff and I were saying that NFTs, we're only in the very beginning stages, like the train hasn't even left the platform yet, is because of all the things that NFTs can bring about. And so NFTs, for me, like the thing that I'm most excited about is what it's going to mean for creators, and whether that's musicians or artists or bloggers or influencers, anybody that creates anything, it's really going to do a 180 on the creator economy. So with NFTs, creators will have so much more power in what they create. And taking music as an example, and I'm sure Jeff can speak to this a lot more with his company, but with musicians right now, they, in order to sell their music, they go to platforms like Spotify and whatever, and they barely make any money from these platforms. But in the future, if they sell their music as an NFT, they can get a cut of that. They get all the money from the first sale, and then they can write it into the smart contract that they get a cut of that for every subsequent sale. Same with artists. So if you create a piece of art on, Nifty Gateway, or you sell it on OpenSea and somebody buys it, by the time the 10th person buys it, you're still getting a cut of the sale from that 10th person or the 100th person. And I think this is also a really interesting thing to think about when you think about putting the power into the hands of individuals instead of into companies. So going back to the example of musicians, for instance, right now, if a musician wants to get big, they have to find a record label to sign them. And it's basically just whoever works at record labels that decide if you're a good musician or not, if the people want to hear your music or not. But in the future with NFTs, the public will be able to decide. So, in the future with social tokens, like you as an individual will be able to decide who you want to invest money into and buy their social tokens. And it's the people that get the most tokens that will be able to get big and make it in the mainstream. And this is something that I think is super interesting and super exciting, is putting the power back into the hands of the people instead of in corporations and centralized entities. And all of this starts with NFTs.
Right. And since we are talking about music, and Jeff, the company that you work with, is focused on helping to tokenize music, let's dig into kind of the way that you guys are approaching to make that happen, so that it's not just a whole lot of hand waving, oh, we tokenize it. So help us understand what in the world is it that you're doing all day, and how does it help people in the music industry?
Yeah. So we take things from a different approach than what we see accustomed to today in blockchain land. Today in blockchain land or crypto land, we see you have a sticker, you have a virtual ticket, you have a pass, and that's represented by an NFT token. And at the end of the day, it's only a sticker. It's only a pass, like a backstage pass, or it's some membership token of sorts. And we're taking it a step further, and we're tokenizing real world assets. And I don't even like the word tokenize, but what we were doing is we are representing ownership of a real world asset and allowing users to own that asset, which is visualized by an NFT token. Theoretically, it's tokenizing, but tokenizing has its own kind of connotations attached to it. So what we are doing is we're allowing users to buy percents of a song or of a copy, right? And they can actually own the share and say, hey, I own 1% of the song Living on a Prayer by John Bon Jovi, and here's my ownership. And what this does, I mean, in theory, I could have done that before NFT tokens, sure. But what this does is makes it way easier to do. And so before you would have to find someone who knows someone and get access to it. And the reason why it was so difficult was because there was so much bureaucracy and legal mumbo jumbo and legal loopholes. And sure, that's still there, but now because we can easily just push a button and make it a digital token compared to going through this whole process, which is purely paperwork driven. I think a good way of explaining it is the rise of digital accounting versus paper accounting. When you began to put things in the computer, right, it became a whole lot easier. And so now you have a token that represents ownership. And like what Diana was saying is what it means for creators is that you can take that with you. So so like, for example, you make an account on Facebook, you erase your account on Facebook, who owns your information still? Facebook. But you erase everything there, but it's still there. Here you have this asset that persists beyond being existing on a particular platform. And so to sum up the question, what we are doing with NFT tokens is allowing everyone, I mean the general public and whoever's entitled to purchase a copy, right, the ability to own that. And so what that does is it opens up an enormous amount of capital and funds to flow into the new music industry and vice versa as well, for the new music industry money and the royalties that are generated to be available to the public, which previously was not available. So
right. Got it. Okay. We've got a question from Hayden, who might know about my kind of obsession with Raven Coin. So their question is it practical to create an NFT or unique asset on Raven Coin, such as a musician selling their merchandise? And additionally, are there smart contracts on that blockchain that could help the musician receive royalties after the original sale? So Hayden, to answer that, first I'm going to point to Diana's example of the Mona Lisa earlier, which is kind of how I like to explain to people the value of NFTs beyond what it is that they are. Because, Diana, you're right. One of the main things I hear is, I could just save that JPEG, so why am I going to pay money for it? And to me, there's a big difference between possession and ownership. You can hold that JPEG all day long. You could download it 10,000 times, and you still know that you are not in ownership of that NFT because you just can't do it because of math magic. So the NFT is a completely new type of art form of a thing that has never existed in the history of ever. So yes, you might be able to save an element of it, but it's not the whole thing. So to that end, Ravencoin makes it super straightforward to create completely unique NFTs from your cell phone. While you're making it, you can tie the IPFS hash of a digital file into the NFT. So that reference point will always be part of that NFT. So if it's a PDF, if it's a movie, if it's a MP3, if it's a song file, if it's a JPEG, IPFS doesn't care what type of information you're storing, just that it is stored there and tied to that NFT. So yeah, if you're a musician, you can create a song NFT. And there's some really smart developers who are working on encrypted IPFS embedding, and only the person who owns that token would be able to decrypt the information. So there's really cool work on that front being done. As far as smart contracts go, Ravencoin is focused solely on making it incredibly easy to tokenize. That's it, man. Like they wanted to do one thing and one thing only, and they just knocked that out of the park. Because I don't know of anything else that you can create 21 million Jonathan coins on Raven from my phone wallet, which is just stunning in its brilliance. So there's the answer to that. The other question that I wanted to kick to both of you, Diana and Jeff, Jeff, I'm going to kick to you first, is from Pushkar, who says that the music is a great example, but do you see taxation as the biggest hurdle to mass adoption, and are these capital gains? So before you answer, I'm going to say my piece, which is, yeah, that is a very strong downward pressure on innovation and creativity, which is kind of the standard for government. So anyway, that's my one soapbox moment for that. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts about taxes influencing the NFT world?
Honestly, I don't think it's an impact. I think it's an education question, because taxes still, because all we as in the community is doing with NFTs is opening up and allowing more people to own them. So in the case of art, right? Copyrights always existed. You could always get a copyright on a piece of art, and that would live at some registry somewhere. But now, because the registry is open, it's a whole lot easier to track that and identify that. The same with NFT tokens. It's just a representation of ownership. So is this cap gains? Depends on the asset that it represents. I mean, if it represents a home, the home goes up in value, or if it's music in this case, and the music goes up in value, yeah. I mean, it would be cap gains, but it's not as a result of the NFT token, it's as a result of the underlying asset. And you would have that regardless if you had an NFT token or not. So that's why I see them as kind of two separate things.
Makes sense. What are your thoughts and deeply seated passions about taxation, theft, and the government there, Diana? Not to show my bias.
No, tell us how you really feel, Jonathan. But I don't know. I don't know that the IRS has really decided how they want to view NFTs yet. I think this is a big, gap and a big barrier that we face in the crypto world right now, is that there isn't regulation that has been developed on all facets of crypto. And so with some things, like, we just don't really know how to act and how to behave. And I think that is, something that is maybe preventing people from getting into buying NFTs or, getting into DAOs and things like that, because there's still a lot of uncertainty. And, I would like to stay optimistic and say that hopefully the government comes out with some regulations soon, and that those are all favorable to us. But I think we'll just have to wait and see.
Nice. All right. Rose has a great question, which is, can an NFT ever be deleted?
So someone answered in the chats, in theory, yes, it could be deleted. But because of the beauty of blockchain, you can always see who owned it every step of the way. And can a car be crashed? Yeah. Can a house be burnt down? Yeah. Can a painting be burned? Yeah. I mean, it's very much the same thing in this case. In an NFT token, yes, it can be deleted, but the history behind it cannot.
Right. Part of how I like to explain it is the ownership is almost defined by who can give it away, because there's really only one person who could give the NFT away, and that's the person in control of the private keys of the wallet where that asset resides. So I know specifically to Ravencoin, there are 3 addresses that nobody has the private keys to, because there are no private keys. And one of those is where your Raven goes in order to mint your Raven tokens. So nobody will ever control anything you send there. So it's like the Sarlacc pit. You just send it, it's never coming back. So that math always exists, but it can't be accessed by anybody in order to move it somewhere else. So it's kind of existing in purgatory, but nobody can control it from that point. So There you go. There's your answer. Clarence has a question about how about a virtual online world like an MMORPG? Couldn't the developers hard code rules that disallow fake NFTs to, say, a painting you put up in your virtual house? People pay lots of money for in-game cosmetic items these days, so I think there would be value there. Before I kick it to you guys, I know of Neon Portal or Neon District, which is an online game like that, and somebody bought the end boss NFT for an ungodly amount like a year ago or something. So it's really cool. This one person owns the end boss NFT, and everybody playing the game will interact with that NFT, but only one person owns it. And then your characters that you're playing with are NFTs that you are accruing value by using them more and more and leveling them up. So look into Neon District and the work that Coin Artist is doing. Marguerite de Courcelles is the founder of that company, and she's at the forefront of some really kick-ass crypto gaming stuff. So Diana, from your experience, how do those interactive gameplay elements kind of fit into the NFT space?
Yeah, so I'm not a gamer, so I have pretty limited knowledge on this, but I do think some of the cool things that you can do with gaming is obviously crypto punks, crypto kitties. That's like the big thing out there. And then I also think like with more with games that are this is going to show my lack of knowledge of gaming, but with games where you interact and you have characters and you have to like level up and things like that, I could see a situation where you could even share NFTs with other people. And so say like if you're in a game where you can only acquire a certain character once you reach a certain level, you could, share your NFT character with your friends. And, I could play when I have time, and then Jonathan could play when he has time, and then Jeff could play. And so we have basically like 3 times the manpower of playing this game and leveling up and getting to the next stage and getting the next characters. Or say like I don't have any time and I'm like, well, I know Jonathan's like a pro at this game. He's at 10 levels ahead of me. I'm going to see if I can borrow his character and just play 10 levels ahead because I know I'm never going to get there on my own account. So those are like a couple of things that I think would be cool to see there. But again, yeah, I haven't experimented too much with that because I just never really got into the gaming world.
Got it. So how about, because we're at 37 minutes in, let's just cut you loose to look to the future, because we've got a pretty good understanding of removing the mystery and misconceptions of NFTs. So Diana, what is it about Unstoppable Domains that makes that a project that you want to spend at least a third of your life working on? Because you got your daylight hours, you got 8 hours to spend, and you're spending it on this project. So what is it about Unstoppable Domains that makes it worth your focus?
Yeah, sure. So I think at Unstoppable Domains, our long-term focus is onboarding everybody to the decentralized web. And so the decentralized web or the D-Web or Web3, whatever you want to call it, basically right now we're in Internet Web 2.0. And in the future, we're going to move to this new internet, Web 3, that's going to be decentralized. So instead of having, corporate entities like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter dominating our entire lives, and I'm sure everybody's seen the social dilemma by now. We all know, we're not the customers of those platforms. We're the product, and they can't really do much without us. And on the same token, too, like our entire whatever content we curate on those platforms, say you're an Instagram influencer and you have your entire business and your entire livelihood on your Instagram account, Instagram has the power to shut down your account at any point in time and basically destroy your entire business. And it's in their terms and conditions. They don't have to give you a good reason for it. They can just do it at their will. That's a pretty extreme case. On a smaller note, like if they were to shut down an ordinary person's account, you might be sad about all the photos or all the stories or all the highlights that you saved on your Instagram account. And so in the future, we're going to have, a different type of web that's actually going to be catered to the individual, and it's going to be all about digital ownership and owning and controlling your digital identity. And so with Unstoppable Domains, we sell blockchain domain names to people, and right now the use cases are limited to, I would say, two main things. The first thing is making it easier to send and receive cryptocurrency. So right now, when you send Bitcoin to somebody, you have to know their public address, which is this long string of characters and numbers that nobody can remember. And then, I might text Jonathan and be like, hey, I want to send you some money. Like, can you give me your address? And then you send it to me, and then I copy and paste it. And then I'm like freaking out. Did I miss a character? Like, is this the exact right thing? Or am I sending it to some random person that I don't know? So with blockchain domains, if Jonathan, you have jonathan.crypto, then all I would have to do when I go into Coinbase or wherever and send you money is just type in jonathan.crypto, and I can see that that's you. You can link that to your Twitter account, so I can double verify that it's the right person. And that just makes it a lot more user friendly for people to actually be able to use crypto. And then the second big use case that we have right now is that you can build a decentralized website with your blockchain domain. So if you have jonathan.crypto, you can, build a website just like any other website on Web2. And you can access the decentralized web actually pretty easily by downloading a browser extension, or Cloudflare just came out with an extension where you can change your DNS settings. There's a lot of ways to access the decentralized web that's probably a lot easier than you might think. So
that's cool.
So those are the two main use cases right now. In the long run, our goal is to onboard everybody onto the decentralized web.
Cool. For anybody who wants to, you can send me Ethereum at minderfolden.eth. So I do own that. Pay $70 to send me $5. I'll take it. So I got a question directly, so I'm not going to say the person's name in case they wanted to be sneaky about it. But their question was for Diana as well, saying that, quote, you said blockchains are also an NFT. Can you go deeper on that? So did you mean that as kind of like a fractal thing, that each blockchain is its own non-fungible token? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I meant that blockchain domain names are an NFT. I apologize if I said blockchains are an NFT. Blockchain domain names are an NFT. So anything that's a digital asset that's minted onto the blockchain, as an ERC 721 token, is considered an NFT. And so that's exactly what blockchain domain names are. They live on the blockchain. And you can, like I just talked about the use cases that you have, but you can also view them as a digital asset, as a collectible. If what's an example? I mean, if you say you're like really into a game, or you're really into a certain niche, and you want to collect all of the domain names that are part of that niche, for now, I think in the future, we encourage everybody to make good use of it and build something on it. But if you want, you can also just use it as a collectible. You're really into food, you can collect pizza.crypto, beer.crypto, all of these different things. And we've seen people do this too. If you go on OpenSea and search for Unstoppable Domains, you'll see a ton of domains that are just circulating out there.
Cool. Got it. So Jeff, how about you, man? Like, what is it about the music industry and that world that makes this project the one that you want to be building?
I think that so the spirit of blockchain is to bring forth the new world, right? Like the new economy, like a better world where things are owned, and all that maximalist things that we had going around 2017 and 18, and essentially bridging the gap, right? Bridging the gap between the digital world and the real world. And what excites me about Opulous is that it's one of the few, if not the only, so someone please correct me if I'm wrong, project which is digitizing actual real world assets today and allowing them to be accessible to the greater digital decentralized economy. And this is the first step in not Opulous in general, but digitizing real world ownership of actual assets and allowing people to own them and trade them and use them is the first real step in bringing forth the blockchain decentralized economy, quote unquote, to the greater world. And so it's so much beyond buying stickers or this and that. And has its very awesome, nice niche and nice use case there. But when you begin to digitize real world assets in a way, that's where blockchain technology, that's what everyone was preaching about blockchain technology back in 2015, 16, 17, that we kind of lost sight of. And that's where it's going to come back to, because that's what it's all about. So what excites me about Opulous is it's doing exactly that. It's bridging the gap between real world assets and the digital economy.
Cool. So if you could type that into the chat, Opulous. So somebody's asking how you spell that. And winning by a technicality, there's an artist, Crypto Kaiju, who creates vinyl work and embeds NFC chips and then programs the NFC chip with the number that goes into the token that you get when you buy that toy, that vinyl toy. So you receive the NFT and that toy, and they go together. So it's technically, I guess that could count as tokenizing a physical object. So that's what just blows my mind, is how many different ways this same thing can be built out, which is stunning. So there was one thing that rocked my world when I heard it, which is blockchain is a statement of fact, not of value. So I wanted to put that on your plates to unpack in real time. So Jeff, I want to watch you handle that first.
So yeah, thank you. So like we've said, all an NFT token is it just points to ownership. It's not actually ownership, but it represents ownership. So like my very first example of, I have my house deed in my safe, and I could open up the safe, I could bring the house deed to someone and show it, or I could have an NFT that points to that and says it owns it. So like the example, it's a fact that by having this NFT token, it's not the value, it's not the house, but it's a fact and it's a representation of that. So that's how I would unpack that.
Got it. How about you, Diana?
I think that's a great explanation. I don't have much to add.
There you go. So Pushkar is wondering, how would lending work in this new world of finance and economy? Say, for example, if I own an album and I want to take a loan out against it, how would that work, right? So before I kick it to you guys, I have a sneaking suspicion that your answer will be, it could work any number of ways, whatever way that particular chain addresses that issue, but the sky's the limit. We haven't even seen the beginnings of it. So that's my prediction. So either make me a liar or a truth teller. So Diana first.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that 100%, Jonathan. I think, the possibilities are endless, but you can take out a loan against a digital asset in the same way that you can take out a loan against a physical asset. So however you want to write that into the smart contract, I think that's, up to the blockchain and up to the people that want to take the loan out against their asset.
Got it.
And then I think the same thing. So the magic is, loans and these concepts are nothing new. And how many different ways can you get a loan today? How many types of loans are there right now? And there's tons. There's more than we could count. So the same would be in the blockchain space. There's many different types of loans. There's different ways it could be structured and leveraged. And just like Diana said, on one chain, on one product, on one company, it can work one way. On another, it can work another way. And so there's some loans in today that are kind of not favorable, or maybe they're a bit risky. And this, you're going to see the same in the blockchain space. The difference is that when you have a loan from a bank, it's at a central bank. It's at a central institution. It's at a DB. It's got a domain. It's like very locked. In blockchain land, it's very open in this aspect, and so you are a fortune teller in this aspect. You can do it however you want. You just have to find your flavor that you feel confident in as both a lender, as a borrower, and when that happens, then you really open up the gates essentially, because you're no longer at the mercy of an institution. You're at the mercy of the code or of the smart contract. And sure, things go wrong, yeah, but things go wrong a whole lot less than they have in the traditional sense of things going wrong at like an actual centralized loan lender.
And I would just add to that too. I think you bring up really good points, Jeff. I would just add to that too that like the biggest differences between taking out a loan in a centralized system versus a decentralized system is, I think, one is you cut out the middleman. So you instead of going to the bank, you go directly to the source. And then what that means as well is that it also expedites the process. So whereas today, in order to take out a loan, it might take, a ton of paperwork, and then it might take days or weeks or even months to get approved for a loan. I think taking out loans against NFTs or anything in a decentralized system is going to be a lot more instantaneous. So if you need a loan today, you can get that loan in the next, few minutes on the blockchain.
Yeah, makes sense. And Sorete is asking, are there any interoperability issues on NFT tokens? There is at least one that I can remember. This was like a year or two ago. CryptoKitties and Gods Unchained, a trading card game. If you had a certain type of CryptoKitty in your wallet, you could mint a special totem statue that had special powers in Gods Unchained. So it's actually really cool. To me, it's not an issue. It's an extra feature that developers of a game or a project can always add value to what they're doing by including other projects. And you can do that without really asking, although it's nice and it's better if everybody's collaborating. But the entity is an entity, and as long as it's kind of on the same chain, Ethereum to Ethereum, that kind of thing, I don't see any issues there. So what have been things that hit your radar?
So I agree from Ethereum to Ethereum, there's no issues, but when you're on Ethereum, you're married to Ethereum for better, for worse, and as we've seen, is for worse. For example, for me to mint a smart contract that has a bit of like to mint a smart contract that it has an NFT aspect, it might has a whitelist aspect, it might have the royalty aspect we talked about here. It's like 0.6 ETH, and for me to mint a single token off that is 0.05 ETH. So I'm blowing a lot of money on this. And this is just on Ethereum. And so then you think, okay, I want to go to a cheaper chain. So I want to go to, let's talk about Binance chain. Okay, so then you have to talk about a bridge that goes across. And now we're back at where we were with ERC20 tokens, where it was all about the bridges and all about the cross-chain communication. And you can think of, even in this case, you can even think of blockchains like companies. And yeah, it's really cool to be at Ethereum, for example. Everyone knows it. It's very common, but it has its own issues. And so you might want to go someplace else that might be a bit more friendly towards your use case. Like maybe in this case, you want to mint tokens and have smart contracts and don't want to pay $10,000. But then you go to, let's say, Binance chain. I'm not endorsing it. I've got my own opinions, but you go to Binance chain, And now the liquidity is significantly less, and the number of buyers and sellers are significantly less. The websites suck. There's no OpenSea. And so you're at the mercy of Binance Chain for better or for worse, just like you were at the mercy of Ethereum for better or for worse. And so I see it as an issue, just like how we saw in 17 and 18, how interoperability was the new thing. And this is exactly why, and we're all paying the price with expensive Ethereum transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there've been a couple different types of questions that are all kind of centered around the same issue, which is the challenge of bridging the physical and digital worlds. And Pushkar, it takes the shape of how do you ensure that the same asset is representative or on two NFTs on two different platforms, which I think maybe the question is, how do you make sure two different people haven't tried to tokenize the same bridge in New York and then try to sell them, right? So how do you prevent double tokenizing for one physical asset?
So in theory, yeah, two people can mint this tokenize the same bridge and sell it. Just like I can buy supercoolwebsite.com or supercoolwebsite.io or supercoolwebsite.this or .that. And yeah, it's the same website name, but different domain, just like how it's the same representative asset, but it's just a different chain per se. But then it comes down to what's accepted and what is valuable. And so .com is most valuable and accepted, or Ethereum would be, or maybe the bridge says, hey, no, thank you, everyone. We're going to make our own chain over here. And you guys could buy Ethereum representation of us or Binance Chain representation of us, but it's not official. We endorse this. And so that would be how I most, at scale, I mean, it's nice and fine and dandy to be like the decentralized world and power to the people and all that. But I mean, what NFTs are going to do is they're going to enhance the current paradigm, not fracture from it. And you're going to see enhancements and enhancements and enhancements until it's so different. But they're going to come from enhancements first. And so you're going to have to find an actual institution to endorse something and put their stamp of authority behind it. Because, yeah, how do you enforce it on a legal standpoint? And now we're not talking about digital stuff. We're talking about the traditional land, right? We're not talking about like DAOs or voting or governized tokens with that. We're talking about traditional land. And so there always has to be that endorsement or that gap there of the traditional world.
Got it. All right. So we've covered the absolute basics. I asked the dumbest questions I asked early on in my crypto journey. So I was glad to cover those. We also covered kind of where things are going to be going in the future. So covered a lot of good ground. We've got the last couple of minutes here. I want to make sure that we stick the landing. So Diana, if you would, please tell everybody if they want to connect with you, where they should do that. And if you would, put your link there in the chat room. And then, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to do the same.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on Twitter. I'll drop my handle in the chat. It's DDWCHEN. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search Diana Chen Unstoppable. You can also go and listen to the Unstoppable podcast. I host that podcast for the company. And we bring on experts in the space who know far more than I do. And so you get to hear really smart people talk about this stuff more. You can also check out our YouTube channel. We have a lot of educational material there. So if you're trying to learn more, definitely check out the Unstoppable podcast, check out our YouTube channel, and I'll drop those links in the chat.
Outstanding. Got it. And Jeff, how about you, ma'am? Where do you want people to look you up?
I wish I was more active on Telegram. I used to be. I'm not anymore. I'm working on that though. The best place to contact me is LinkedIn, or I'll drop my email in the chat too. I'm not as active as I should be on Telegram or Twitter or there, but I'm working on that. So I'll share my email address and my other links in the chat too.
Outstanding. All right. Well, thank you both for being here. Thank you to Tacen for organizing the whole event and getting the word out. So thank you, everybody here in the audience, for showing up for this wacky world of NFTs as well. So my name is Jonathan Pritchard / Minderfolden. If you're on Urbit, and if you can't tell, I'm an Urbit maximalist. If you're on Urbit, look me up at Minderfolden / Antechamber, and that is like an anti-room, not an anti-room. So that's it in the link. And on Legacy FedNet, I'm most active on Twitter. You just can't get rid of me there. So my handle there is Minderfolden 2. So Minderfolden, all one word there. So those are my two things. I want to meet all of you. I'm going to be sticking around for at least half an hour. We're going to walk out into the room. So that's it for the presentation portion of the program. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night. And go meet and greet everybody.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you, guys.